Harmeen, extremely interesting keynote today.
Thank you so much.
Loved the discussion on India and the contrasts and contradictions.
Thank you very much. And you know, I do belong to this absolutely fascinating country, and you know, we are, I think Indians themselves, we are full of contradictions, but it comes from our country, which is, it is a country of contrasts. I mean, you see the phenomenal growth, whether it's in smartphones or data, etc. And it is despite the fact that the infrastructure and the spectrum and everything is the highest cost in the world, and data is the lowest cost in the world. And but I guess that's what makes us unique, I guess.
Inside this environment, your job is to come up with a digital strategy. With all of these challenges in this very specific environment, how do you go about doing that?
I think it's very much about following the consumer and seeing, you know, it's not only about seeing what they're doing and what they're wanting, but it's also understanding their behavior and seeing that change. And small subtleties actually give you lots of clues on what could be, you know, the next disruption to be caused. And we do that pretty well as a team, and you know, a large part of the leadership team just brainstorming through at least a couple of times a year, if not more often, on saying what would be the, you know, the next 6 months, what would they bring, and trying to always come up with something that's different. And being one of the largest, you know, being the largest provider in the country, the expectation is always there that something first is going to come from Airtel, and it's a tough benchmark to keep meeting every year, but that's what our consumers expect out of us. And I think the second is, I really like, you know, my organization's tilt towards the consumers is so high that it's the entire philosophy from start to finish is all about the customer. And whether it's an enterprise customer or it's just the mobile consumers themselves, I think we learn so much from them, just listening to what their perception is, and you know, their perception is has to be our reality, and seeing that how they are going through their own digital journey in their lives, and as India becomes far more digital company and country, and at the same time, you know, taking that again, that contrast of somebody who doesn't even know what the meaning of digital is, but he is getting more digital. And seeing how his life is changing and how you can be a part of it. It's a fantastic job.
And one thing that seemed very exciting as well was this concept of disruptive propositions. How do you come up with the propositions?
I think again the same way. Two things. One is really understanding the consumer behavior and what are their pain points, and you know, together with customer experience, we keep looking at saying we've got this phenomenon called moments of truth, and that's really at a point where you interact with the customer and either something's gone really well or gone really wrong. And how you learn from that, and how you tailor the interaction with the customer from that. I think that's where this whole digital journey actually started from. And our digital journey is not, it's not about just creating, you know, shiny little apps and things like that. It goes really deep, and we are spending a lot of time in getting our foundation right. And I think every time you overstep that process and you say, no, I'm just going to go do this, you end up just creating something that, you know, I often call it, you don't want to put a lipstick on a gorilla. I mean, the idea is if you want to really digitize, you have to go really deep. You have to make sure your basics are in place. And you know, from the foundation up, layer by layer as you go, that's when it makes a real difference to the lives of the consumers and a real difference to the company. That's what makes sure that it increases the stickiness of your customers, the engagement of your customers. So one is really falling through all those breadcrumbs and making sure you understand and interpret them correctly, and involve the consumers all along the way. And you know, everything we do, every property that we create, out of the digital team, we actually pre-test it with the consumers now, and that's been our learning, because otherwise we used to normally test it just before launch, and you'd end up deciding at that point saying, oh, they've interpreted this very differently, and now I have to go and change whether it's the proposition or look and feel or the journey or whatever, or how they interact with those propositions. And now we start with that. So that has made a big change in our a difference in our thinking. And the second piece I really get very fascinated about is the insights we get from our own data. That is where a lot of the clues are sitting. And I think the difference between just running analytics and driving to intelligence out of the data, that is what helps you, give you a very good, again, more breadcrumbs on what could be, the next strategy and the next leap. And obviously, and we keep a very wide watch on anything that and everything that anybody else is doing, and not only just in the telecommunications industry, but the whole internet industry as well, and seeing where we could partner up. And we believe in a very open ecosystem, and go and work with anybody else who's bringing about that change in thinking or disruption, and how you could learn from that and adopt it, and B, partner up where possible.
Well, thank you very much for the time. Once again, love the keynote this morning, and really good to see you again.
Very good to see you as well, Mike.